Assistant Professor Katerina Donopoulou, Assistant Professor Haris Rizopoulos, and Iuliani Thanachos, an adjunct teaching personnel in the Department of Digital Arts and Cinema, will present to you augmented reality artworks and ways to do it and examples. And thank you, and we'll all eyes and ears for your presentation.
Okay, let me share the screen. Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Katerina Donopoulou. I'm an assistant professor of interactive arts at the Department of Digital Arts and Cinema of the University of Athens. And together with my colleagues Haris and Iuliani, we are going to talk about augmented reality and geolocated art in nature and public spaces. You probably have some unknown words related to this title. So I'm going to very briefly say a few words about what augmented reality is. So augmented reality overlays some virtual elements, which can be 3D models, images, video, sounds, etc., onto the real world environment. So the viewer of the application sees together, experiences the real environment together with some virtual elements. So one question is, how do we experience these applications? The simplest way is to use some mobile devices like smartphones or tablets. And if we open an augmented reality application through a tablet, for example, we can see the real world through the camera of the device. And in some specific points of the real environment, some virtual objects appear. Similarly, with some headsets that support AR, we can see, again, the real environment. And at some specific points of this environment, some virtual objects appear. So another question is how the application knows where to place these virtual elements. There are different approaches regarding this issue, and we are going to discuss again these issues when we meet during the workshop, because we are going to work with some of these options. So the simplest option is to use AR markers, which are some black and white images like QR codes, like the one you see here. So we can attach to each marker a specific virtual object, for example. So when the camera of the application detects this specific marker, the corresponding content appears. Nowadays, we don't use a lot AR markers, especially in artistic works, because we can use almost any image as marker. So we usually use some images that are part of the artistic work of some installation, for example, and we use these images to trigger the virtual content. Another option is to scan a surface in the real world or an object, a 3D object, and to place the virtual object onto this surface or this 3D real object. And then a fourth option is to use GPS coordinates. So we can tell an AR application that we want a virtual object, for example, to appear in some specific coordinates. So when the viewer using this application is at this specific location, the AR content appears. This is also a case that we are going to use during the workshop. And this takes us to the geolocated artworks, because geolocated artworks do exactly this thing. They use GPS coordinates to place some elements at specific location in public space or a natural environment. And these elements appear when the viewer reaches this location. So I'm going to show you some AR artworks in public space. And later my colleagues are going to talk about augmented reality in nature. The first example is the project Advertiser by Julian Oliver, which is an AR project that replaces advertisement billboards in public space with artworks. So a group of artists, for example, here in this example is in Berlin, they use this application during the Transmediale Festival. They selected some specific billboards in public space, and they replaced these billboards with their artworks, which are videos in these examples, but in some other cases are 3D objects or images. So when people look at this billboard through a specific device, instead of the advertisements, they can see these artworks. Oliver uses the term improved reality to refer to this project, which is an interesting idea of how you can use AR to correct something that you don't like in the city or to improve your experience of public space. Another project is the project We Are in MoMA, which was initiated by Sander Winhoff together with Mark Skwarek, together with a collective of artists again, who decided to make their own virtual exhibition in MoMA, which is, as you may know, one of the biggest museums in New York, without MoMA knowing about the exhibition. So they placed virtually some of their artworks inside the museum, and they invited people in their exhibition in MoMA. And whoever had this application, here you see some screenshots of this intervention. Whoever used this application, this AR application, could see the virtual artworks inside the museum. Again, an interesting idea behind this artwork is that AR technology allows anyone to reshape anything, anywhere. This is a thought of the initiators of these projects. And it is interesting because AR permits us to add anywhere some objects or some information which is actually invisible to the broad public. But some people who have the correct application, they can access this. So it can be used also in activistic interventions, because you can place something somewhere that's not allowed, but some people can access this content. Another interesting example is the project #Juliet2, which is artwork by Tamiko Thiel. She's an artist who works a lot with AR, and Julian is going to present you some more of her projects, because some of her projects are inspired by nature. But I have selected this one, which is quite interesting, intervention in public space. This augmented reality content is triggered when the viewers are in front of the statue of Juliet in Munich. There is a very silly tradition regarding this statue. According to this tradition, if you touch the breast of this statue, you're going to have good luck. So there are in the internet thousands of photos of tourists that touch the breast of this statue. So the artist imagined Juliet, this figure, as a warrior who defends the statue against the people who touch her body without her consent. So a lot of figures of Juliet appear around the real statue, and they bear some weapons, and they surround the real Juliet in order to defend her. This is another AR project, Soundscapes Landscapes, by a Greek digital artist collective, Mede Electronic. They have created a walk in a specific neighborhood in Athens. And through the AR application, viewers can trigger content, which is videos or sounds or texts that relate somehow to the neighborhood and the citizens living there. It uses, again, GPS coordinates in order to trigger the correct content. This is a screenshot of this AR application where a graffiti of a spider becomes alive when you watch it through the application. So the spider becomes alive and starts wandering in the neighborhood. And then we have a specific category of geolocated projects that we can call sound walks or audio walks. These projects use audio mostly, and through a specific software that we can use again in the workshop next week, we can select a specific area in the map, and we can place sounds in specific spots on this map, the map of this area. So all these circles that you see in this image are sounds which are placed on a main road and some other roads next to this. So when people are actually in this place, this is the road that you saw before in the map. So when people are walking at this road, the specific content is triggered according to their location. This specific project, Resonant Paths, was a project about narratives of refugees, homeless people, and people with disabilities living in Athens, who gave their own perspective of the city, of how they experience the city. So most of these sounds are fragments, narrative fragments of these interviews, together with other sounds that create a soundscape. Audiobooks can be very interesting and can be also very immersive. Sometimes you hear the sounds of an audiobook and you are like transferred to another location. So it's something that we are going also to use during the workshop. In generally, what I found interesting regarding AR and geolocated projects is that you somehow can create like an invisible layer of elements, which can be sounds or images or videos or 3D content that remain invisible to the broad public, but the viewers of the work can discover and explore these elements gradually as they experiment the artwork. So now I'm going to give the floor to Harris, who is going to talk to you about some more examples of projects in public space, and then some examples of projects in nature.
Katarina mentioned the audio walks. Well, there's another project that uses, well, a similar method called the sound walk, probably. It's a project I had the pleasure of taking part in. It was realized in Cyprus, in Limassol, and it was run by the Technical University of Limassol. This is the reference you can use if you need the paper. So this project uses a sound walk, which is a method that takes the users through a guided tour along a specific trail or path or route or a number of sites. And the aim was to gauge the emotional response of the users to the stimuli that were originating from the city of Limassol. And you can imagine there are a multitude of types, like quiet stimuli in terms of audio, I mean sound, busy sounds, tranquil sounds, hectic sounds, and all that. All this constitutes the soundscape. And we had two groups of users. people who couldn't see and people who could see for comparison. And the users were asked to self-report their emotional response at every single point. There were 6 of them. At every single point out of these 6, when we stopped and had them listen to what sounds the city emanated. This is a map of the path we took back then. So we started from the zoo and we ended up in a very busy commercial road. We crossed the beach, some tranquil places like churches and all that, some very busy highways. We were using also a custom-built app, which was used by the users to indicate their emotional state. So we used a very well-known conceptualization of emotion, Russell's circumplex model of affect, which encodes emotional response in terms of 2 axes, valence and arousal, meaning is it a good or bad emotion you're experiencing, and how powerful an emotion is that? Do you feel activated? Are you excited, or are you at a state of tranquility? We used 5-point scales, as you can see on the screenshot. You can see some parts along the way from the seaside, some very busy underpass, some very tranquil church entrance, and at the end we ended up in a very busy commercial street. Now, talking about nature, there have been a number of projects, and we are going to show you a few of them so as to draw some inspiration. So one of them is Project Forest Trail. This is a project that relies on AR content along a forest trail. This is a very popular choice. So you have a predetermined trail, and at various points along that route, you place some AR content in one way or the other, either using GPS or markers or whatever, like Katerina said before. So here you can see also a custom-built hardware device. You can see how it works. Basically, you have an overlay of content on specific places and dealing with particular aspects of nature, like sunlight, the trees, the vegetation, the leaves, chemical processes, and all that. Even acorns and some crude fox here, as you can see. You can follow animals and interact with them. And even witness the growth of animals, plant life, sorry, I meant plants, not animals, sorry, plant life, etc. There's another project in Brazil. Manaus is considered widely by many to be the gateway to the Amazon rainforest. Anybody who is interested in the biodiversity of the Amazon forest probably enters through that Brazilian city. So this is the reference to that. This is, again, a mobile AR application. So you have visitors interacting with 3D models of local wildlife, mostly. So basically, you scan tags at certain locations to access 3D content. The purpose is primarily educational in this case, and the creators have divided the content into categories named by animals, which have to be followed and interacted with. You can also save your progress and your interaction in the gallery, which fosters some sort of persistence. The app is available on Google Play, so if you haven't defined yourself in the Amazon forest, by all means, use it. So you can see some indicative screenshots here. And, well, it's pretty much the standard content. So you have an overlaid graphic, as you can see, the third image on a marker. You have the option of pulling some informative content like the second and fourth screen. The first screen I find interesting because it alludes to an element of gamification without actually calling it as such. So to me, it reminds me an old 2D RPG, to be honest, like the map, the overworld of such a retro game. But it's another avenue one can go for. Another object from the UK this time, another project, sorry, from the UK this time, Wild Art Trail. This uses an animated 3D character, the Pulbro Giant, This is the friendly character that guides the player, the user. So it consists of quizzes and other educational activities. It has way markers along the way. It has also sculpture-like objects scattered along the path. It also has some mild gamification elements. So there is a checklist, which is reminiscent of a list of objectives that is used in games. This is the giant, friendly fellow, holding a bar now, as you can see. So this giant comes out at specific points to give you audio feedback. You can pull cards with questions about the animals. In this case, it's the barn owl that the giant is holding. And you can see also this has been implemented along a specific well-known trail in the English countryside. So you can get a sense of scale. I mean, the giant is a giant, so you can see how big that giant would be. And you also have markers along the way, specific markers just for the application in question. Moving on, another UK implementation, Datum Explorer. So in this case, you have binaural audio informing you about wildlife. This goes in a slightly different direction. It has captured the natural context and the natural environment and imported it into virtual space. So it's sort of strictly not going through the AI route. It goes into more mixed reality and even virtual reality. But it consists of two elements: a site-specific installation, which has been presented at festivals, most prominently the Sonar Festival in 2015, and there is a game app on the phone which you can use to interact with that environment. There are links which, if we have time, we can see a video maybe, but you can see some images here of the 3D content inside the virtual world and how you can access the virtual world through your mobile device, through the game app. So basically, you have a virtual overlay that allows you to access the content without you actually having to be there, strictly speaking. Future Nature is another project. It deals with the concept of rising water levels and aquatic habitats. You can see a number of questions, a number of screenshots here. What basically happens is you take a picture of a specific site along a trail, and you can see that how it would look like if the water levels were to increase. And you can interact with aquatic life forms, presumably, such as a mermaid, as we can see here. This is a Greek, an application made by a Greek institution. So it's called the Advent project. It's called the Advent project, sorry, by Athena Research Center. So basically consists of AR walks in national parks and forests of Greece. It is based on the identification of plants along the way using AR technology. You can also take virtual tours along local points of interest, and even 360-degree VR experiences when you are not on the trail, as they say. You can see some indicative screenshots here. There is an app on Google Play. You can also freely access it. This is basically how it works. So you have the GPS location, and basically you have virtual elements depending on which direction you look at and the proximity. So you can see arrow-like structures guide you along the way. A Hungarian entity created this, Hungarian University developed this application, AR in Nature. It has the objective of reconnecting us to nature. Also plays with the gamification elements and even location-based gaming in this case. You can see how you can access how you can access overlaid information on specific small-scale environmental objects. Another application, mobile AI in the wild. So this is an app developed in Unity. Uses the familiar recipe of trail and scanning, being along trail and scanning. The goal here is to actually explore as much as possible and to discover as many AR markers as possible. So it makes it a game, so to speak. And even incorporates something like a mini game. So what the authors call subcomponents of the AR app. So the subcomponents are the following. So you can compete against animals, the virtual bodies of animals. So if you can tap the screen faster than a woodpecker can chunk on a piece of wood, then you win, presumably. You can use image filters to reconstruct how an animal would look at the world. You can again visualize the rising water levels, flood being a hazard in many cases. You can also see how dragonflies fly, which is a very particular insect because they can hover in place. They have a very elaborate flying mechanism. And the all-time classic, you can answer questions. You can see some screenshots from that application for some of those. I will call them mini games, for want of a better word. There's also the Agent of Discovery app, which allows people to design missions. That's how they call them, the designers, missions in situ, in the natural environment. So there is also a play anywhere mode, but in pure AR fashion, it has been used in various countries, most notably US, Canada, Costa Rica, Australia, and New Zealand. You have a web authoring tool, a web mission planner, so to speak, and you have some challenges to implement. This is a map of an image of the challenges. You can discover clues. You can pick the best possible answer among many. You can take a particular picture and so on and so on. Okay. You can see some screenshots. Again, a familiar screen layout and familiar techniques, GPS and overlaid content, which we will also be using presumably next week. And there's also an app that is an implementation that is based on a Netflix documentary. And it has to deal with how we reclaim nature. So the terminology used is rewilding, so as opposed to dewilding. So today's biomes have been dewilded through human intervention. So the wild element of nature has been removed. And we need to, nature needs to reclaim these habitats. And we are going to help nature do it as users of this application. It also relies on physical corporations. You have to be there in many cases. So, and depending on how many people are in particular places along that location, you also implement a voting mechanism. So each person is a vote, so to speak. It has launched in 3 locations worldwide: Singapore, New York, and Bristol. You can see these are a couple of videos which you can see. So I don't know if you can see the video playing. I don't know the streaming quality. So you can see the nature being dewilded. The biome is being dewilded here. And in the right hand side in the frame, you can see it being rewilded. So nature is again, so to speak, it's making a comeback. Now, at this point, I will have to give the floor to Eleni Theona, who will continue along this route.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eleni Theona. We have already seen a lot of artworks, augmented reality and locative artworks so far, so we have a pretty good idea of the variety. So my particular focus, my research interest and the perspective I wanted to open up in this presentation is the experiential impact of this kind of artworks, and I'm particularly interested, and I want us to have in mind and start thinking about and questioning what kind of relationship do we have between the artwork and the actual location where the artwork evolves and spreads. So what kind of connection between the digital content and elements of the physical world, say physical into many quotes, and what kind of negotiation is there? So we have seen artwork so far, and we can say that maybe in Geo-Located works such as soundbooks or storytelling, there are examples where we have one narrative, one storyline that is spread around the environment and demands some kind of orchestration, so it's being told across multiple points. We can have one narrative per point, or we can have many different stories geolocated into one particular point of interest. In AR works, it's kind of trickier. So the usual paradigm is that we have digital artifacts, digital content floating freely, and it takes slightly more work to interrelate the actual the digital content with particular elements in the landscape and the environment. So expanding a little more on this line of thinking, again, if we start considering aspects of embodied interaction, of course, bearing in mind that to experience this work, we always experience these artworks through some kind of technological mediation. The usual is through our smartphones or through the tablets. So what kind of embodied interaction is there? Which sense do these works primarily address? Do they enhance our vision? Do they suppress our hearing or things like that? It's a set of questions to guide how we design this kind of artworks. So what kind of movement does it need to be orchestrated? What bodily gestures come into play in order to be able to interact and experience the artwork? So just a couple of more works to wrap this presentation. Wunderkammer, it's a work that Olafur Eliasson created with a Qt Art application. Actually, Qt Art invited a series of artists to experiment with the app it has provided. So he created a set of digital elements that were important and say iconic to his practice, and we can, find them in as concepts or as objects in his work. Various objects, as you will see in the images, organisms, light sculptures, and he wanted to create extraordinary experiences in ordinary everyday places and be able to support some sort of embodied interaction and engagement with the elements. I'm not sure how he's...
We cannot see the images, Juliani. We just see the first slide. Now we can see the images, yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it at that, but maybe something malfunctions. So you can see that he created digital artifacts that either float freely in the location or, have a minimal negotiation in terms of where they are placed. So I'm not sure how the embodied interaction takes place. Perhaps you can spin them or movement or things like that, but it remains unclear. Another artwork that I found rather interesting is the one created by Lauren Moffat for the Grand Palais in Paris. So it's not really a work in nature, but it has a lot of natural say, imaginary element. So she was inspired by the work of Ballard, by his novel The Crystal World, and she created fictional flowers, and it was very interesting that she employed a mixed technique that she both employed photogrammetry scans as well as hand strokes to create the digital content. She placed the flowers into the Grand Palais to create the impression of the greenhouse. And what is interesting is that she wanted to play with the scale, so she created huge augmented reality artworks that were moving within the Grand Palais in Paris. So the experience of the audience was rather interesting in terms of scale. So these are some images. Imagine, of course, that you always get to experience the imagery and the artwork through your smartphone as you move into the surrounding, but it must be nice to feel that you have, you know, the size of an insect next to this kind of augmented reality installation. So another work, this was the last installation of Christo while he was alive, the London Mastaba, and in 2020 it was installed, the actual physical installation was installed in a Serpentine Lake in the Hyde Park by Christo in 2018, and in 2020 using the same application I mentioned before, they recreated a digital version, virtual counterpart in the actual location, in the particular place where the physical installation once was installed. So these are some images of the actual physical installation, and it has a very striking choice of colors, so it gives you a very bizarre impression, but you can also see the reflection of the sun and the light on it. And here, I'm not sure if you can see, let me just try to, can you see the GIF on the left, on the right? Can you see the GIF image?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here is the augmented reality artwork. It's the exact object placed in the actual location, but additionally they gave the audience you know, that they enabled the audience to move this installation and place it wherever they felt like within the Kensington Gardens. So it must have been interesting if you got to experience both the physical installation and the augmented reality counterpart, to experience the difference in the experiential impact of a different kind of approach in art making, right? And also to see the difference in the experience of placing the same object in different locations and what kind of relations come up with the physical environment. So to finish, the last work that I enjoy very much is The Gardens of the Anthropocene by Tamiko Thiel, because it has an element of research behind the actual art making. What happened here, let me show you the images, is that Tamiko Thiel researched the native plants of, I think it was the Seattle Art Museum Olympic Sculpture Park. So she worked with the native plants, and she actually kind of suggested some sort of speculative evolution of the native flora in order to be able to address future erratic climate change and the disruption in general of the climate that was in Seattle. So she had, this kind of research that supported the artwork. There was this narrative. So she created a site-specific, large-scale augmented reality installation that we can experience. Dimitri, sorry, if you can mute yourself. You can experience while walking around the garden. So that's pretty much it from us. Thank you for your time, and from my part, because I won't be joining you in Evia, I wish all the best for the workshop. I hope you all have a great and very creative, joyous time there. So thank you.